Hi, and welcome to the Digital Digging YouTube channel. Earlier this year, as part of the Digital World series, we looked at Kingdom Come Deliverance by Warhorse Studios. This was a hugely promising project, and I was fortunate enough to secure an interview with the creative director of the studio, Daniel Vavra. In it, I asked a number of questions about the environment and what had gone into the game so far and where it was heading. I'll bung in a link to it at the end of this video and in the description box below if you'd like to take a look at it. But for now, we're going to take a wander around the technical alpha release, which was made available last week, taking a closer look at the environment and seeing for ourselves how the game is developing. I won't be interacting with any of the non-player characters or doing any of the mini-quests. This video is all about the environment, and I'll be revisiting the alpha to explore those aspects of the game in the near future. I've turned the HUD off to give us a clearer view. If you want to do this, just hit the tilde key, the one above the tab key, and type G_show HUD 0 into the console. I'll try and remember to put the instructions in the description box below. We start our journey through Middle Ages Bohemia on this dusty road overlooking the village or hamlet of Sampos. We'll map out the playable area by skirting the outer boundaries of the settlement, the closest of which is over here to our right, so we'll trot down the road, find a high point and see what we can see. Right away, two things catch my eye, the odd-looking scarecrow in the field down there, and over there in the middle of the screen is a building on the very periphery of the settlement. This liminal position often indicates a special function, and sometimes a structure will be at a remove from the central community because it's a focus for ceremony, and sometimes it'll be on the outskirts for a very practical reason. Either way, it's likely to be at the lower limits of the game map, so we'll track down through the field and head into the woods and come at it from that direction. Okay, well, at the edge of the field I can see that rather than generic foliage there are a number of plant types here. Unfortunately I'm no botanist, so if I get something woefully wrong or you spot something I didn't see, then please feel free to leave a comment. Over here, by the stones which have presumably been cleared from the field, is a healthy growth of nettles, and I can also see dandelions and at least 2 or 3 species of grass. I'm not sure what the little purplish chaps are, possibly something from the vetch family, and the little white ones appear to be field mouse ear. And that's where I'm stopping with plant identification because, in all honesty, I can't really tell my asphodel from my elbow and I don't want to mislead anyone. As for the unusual looking scarecrow, well, clothes were not as freely available in the Middle Ages as they are now, obviously, and I can imagine putting them on a scarecrow wouldn't have even occurred to most people. Hanging a piece of threadbare cloth over a roughly human frame would do the job admirably, however, and perhaps in some respect would be an improvement as it would generate a fair amount of noise when the wind got up. The forest edge here denotes the boundaries of this end of the settlement, so we'll head off down the hill and try and find that building on the outskirts. I'm not going to get bogged down in misidentifying tree species here, but when I interviewed Mr. Vavra back in May, I did touch upon the subject. And he said that the current environment was a little conifer heavy and that they intended to do something about it. It's plain to see that he was as good as his word. There's a good mixture here, but as I say, unless I get lucky, I can't really point out anything more helpful than this tree, for instance, is not the same as this one. I'll try and get in touch with someone and get a breakdown of the different species included in the game and then get back to you. We can see that the forest floor contains a number of species that weren't present in the more open landscape, including mosses and these hallucinogenic monsters, which probably deserve their own video, perhaps a little closer to Christmas. You'll see why should I ever manage to get around to it. The birdsong really adds to the immersion here. It's easy to forget what a constant companion it would have been when their habitats were largely intact. The little stream has its own ecosystem, with lots of ferns. This is a very convincing environment. I love the way the leaves scatter the sunlight. Moving on. Here we are at the liminal house, and right away we can see that it is where it is due to eminently practical reasons. This is a tannery, albeit a small-time one. The reason it's on the outskirts is because tanning generates some of the worst smells known to man. They are truly bloody awful. And if you want to keep your friends and be a tanner, then the only way to do so is to live a fair distance away from them. Having said that, I think the process we're looking at here is for producing rawhide. The hide is stripped from a dead animal and then soaked in lime, which is, I think, what's happening here, and that removes all the fat, flesh and hair from the hide. You then finish it by pulling the hide over a beam, which is what I think this object is, and then scraping it with a dull blade before drying, as they're doing here. The fact that they are drying is the clue that this is rawhide, as drying isn't part of the tanning process, but that doesn't mean to say that the next batch in the soaking butts isn't due for tanning. Let's have a poke about inside. First of all, we've got two coops here, both of which have ladders so the chickens can roost high enough to be out of the immediate reach of predators. The larger one looks well protected but doesn't have a door. The smaller one, well, maybe that's out of use for some reason. In we go. I like the way it takes a couple of seconds for your eyes to adjust to the dimmer light. There are some herbs drying in here. I know they can be used in the tanning process, but judging by the size of the bundles, these look like they're intended for domestic rather than industrial use. There's a hanger for drying herbs above the fireplace, and a pot hanger made from a pair of branches bound together. My guess is that these would be made from green wood, as seasoned wood wouldn't last long at all. As it is, with the fire that high, I don't think green wood would fare all that well for any length of time either. Right, well, we've found the storeroom. Lots of lovely period ceramics on the shelves, a sack of apples and what appears to be chestnuts. There's a basket of carrots. Now, I may be way too picky here, but I'm relatively sure that the carrots of this period weren't as orange as modern-day carrots. I know that orange ones were around in the Netherlands a little later, but in this period I would have thought that they would be more likely to be a dark wine colour. I'm happy to be wrong, however. And these are parsnips, maybe? Not sure. Anyway, moving on. There's a big puddle here. It's been raining recently, and a dovecot. Not seen any doves yet, though I'm sure we will in a future update. Plenty of chickens though, always popular, and poppies. Plenty of uses for those. We'll come back to them too. These are hazel bushes and they've been coppiced. That's a method of cutting the hazel so it produces long, straight stems that can be used for a wide variety of things, including building the wattle fences that are all over the place, basket work, making spars for thatching, and probably half a dozen things I've forgotten to mention. Okay, well, the downhill road marks the boundary on this side of the map, so we'll head up the hill. More meadows, and this fence denotes the point beyond which we can go no further. We can, however, see outside the current play area and down into a fairly large river valley. Here's another little field and what looks like a boundary marker for the village. Well, a cross between a boundary marker and a shrine. I think those are angels in there. It would be interesting to find out which ones and what properties they're associated with to get a better idea of the frame of mind of the locals. Boundary markers from this and earlier periods represented much more than the geographical limits of a settlement. In addition to this function, they also marked legal jurisdictions which were fiercely protected. Unlike modern village signs, which are largely there to help travellers understand where they are, these boundaries and markers were of a far more territorial nature. This may or may not be important later in the game. Okay, back to the road, and we'll have a brief look at some of the buildings in the settlement. We won't spend too much time here. As I said earlier, this is a look at the environment, and I'll cover the buildings when we do the mini quests. I'll take the low road because there's another boundary marker and shrine here. This one has candles and a crucifix. Maybe it serves a different function. It's certainly a shrine, and Though it's not exactly on a crossroads, it's on a parting of the ways which may have something to do with it. I'll have to investigate further and get back to you. If, anyone's still with me at this point, I'm fully aware that not everyone's going to be interested in this level of detail. Actually, I'm glad it's just you and me now. We can talk properly at last. A cup of tea, perhaps? Here you go. I didn't know if you took sugar or not, so I haven't stirred it. I found some fig rolls too. Help yourself. Right, carrying on. There's a fairly substantial wood store, presumably belonging to the blacksmith, and here's the smithy. Again, the building is on the outskirts of the settlement for practical reasons. With all that thatch and dry wood around, the last thing you want to live next to is a source of hot sparks. There are a bunch of sword blanks in this barrel, the manufacture of which is rarely a sign of impending peace and tranquility. Here we have the midden or rubbish heap. This would also be on the outskirts for obvious reasons, though I'm not sure that such an important member of the community as the smith would put up with having the midden so close to his place of work. Middens get archaeologists very excited indeed. The late archaeologist Mick Aston once wrote a book called Archaeology is Rubbish, in reference to the fact that the vast majority of things that end up in the ground and which are then discovered by archaeologists are the bits and pieces that nobody wanted. It's a gloomy fact that if people cherish an item or find it of great value, they rarely throw it away. You can occasionally get lucky with coin hoards, stashes and rich burials, but on the whole, Professor Aston hit it on the head. In the UK and much of Europe, archaeology is indeed rubbish. Moreover, somebody else's rubbish. Moving on, we seem to have a roadside stall here selling bits and bobs from the smith, pots and baskets. So it looks as though this village has a fair amount of through traffic, or at least enough for someone to try and make a living selling goods to passing trade. We'll carry on skirting around the village to complete the run of the boundaries. As I said, we'll return to it and have a proper look around inside when we do the mini quests. Here are the village archery butts. For a long time in England it was a legal requirement for people to practice archery, and there are still plenty of towns and villages with lanes called the butts or butt fields. Stop laughing at the back there. Okay, this marks the upper limit of the map here. If we jump over into the next field, there's a flock of sheep, a very important beast to the economy of the period. They provided wool for cloth, hides for leather, and of course lots of good meat for eating, and bones for glue, and a variety of purposes, come to mention it. Bone in this period was the equivalent of plastic in ours. It was used to make a wide range of objects and implements. The tendons and ligaments were also of great value, and certainly in later years you could pay to have large flocks of sheep camp out on your land and fertilise it, increasing its value remarkably. Okay, and the top of their fold marks the limit of the settlement in this direction, so we'll head off across the fields to what looks like an orchard on the other side. We seem to be running through a crop, not sure if this is wheat or barley. Lots more coppiced hazel and something else I don't recognise. And yes, pretty sure it's an orchard. And down here we have a row of beehives, the bees busily making the best of all these lovely flowers. And if we charge up the hill, we come back to where we started our journey. It's not over yet, however, because there's a whole different aspect to the settlement at night time. So we're heading back down the hill to watch the sunset. You don't have to, of course. You can leave it to me from here, or you can stick around or jump forward. It's entirely up to you. And here come the moon and stars. I don't know if the moon phases are synced with the real thing or will be in the future, but the star field is accurate with all the constellations where they should be. There's the plough, and if you follow the last two stars on the right of the constellation up to the bright star, all on its own, but obviously not really on its own, that's the pole star or north star around which all the other stars revolve. At least that's how it looks from our perspective on Earth. It's actually us that's doing the revolving, of course. Here's a real image of the effect when using a long exposure, and that's the pole star right in the middle. After dark, the villagers go about their business with lanterns, and the daytime insects retire, leaving their nighttime counterparts to provide a background chatter. But also, if you know where to look, fireflies make an appearance too. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this first look at the world of Kingdom Come Deliverance, and we'll be returning soon to the more interactive part of the game where we'll have a proper look at the village and those who live in it. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed it, please feel free to give it a like, and if you'd like to be alerted when any new video content is uploaded, then please feel free to subscribe. There's also a number of other social platforms on which I post news about games, archaeology, history, and whatever else has distracted me at any given moment. So if you'd like to be distracted by them too, then please join in. Okay, cheerio chaps, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.